Hey guys, it's QuickyBaby and welcome back to World of Tanks, and this video is going to be all about the infamous Tier 10 German auto-loading tank destroyer, the Waffentrager Auf E-100. I'm going to run down a history of the vehicle and highlight why this is being removed from World of Tanks and why it's probably been one of the least balanced vehicles in the history of World of Tanks. The WTF Auf E-100 first hit the European server on the 1st of November 2013 in patch 8.9, and that's truly terrifying. Doesn't feel like it was coming up for 3 years ago now. And what was crazy about this tank was the fully traversable turret combined with a devastating autoloader. Well, actually a choice between two autoloaders. You could either have an autoloading E-100 or you could have an autoloading Jagdtiger. And when this gun was first released, it actually had 6 shells in a single magazine, which gave this vehicle just unprecedented stopping power in World of Tanks, 3,360 average damage per magazine, enough to kill any vehicle in the game, including the mouse, with some bad RNG. So I went looking on the QuickyBaby Replays website to see if I could find any old WTF E100 games, and here is one from the 29th of November 2013 by Sir Pufferlot. This is the WTF E100 in its first unnerfed state in patch 8.9. 1, 2, 3, there's a dead tier 8 heavy tank within 4 seconds of the first shot. And he's even got 1, 2, 3 shells for an E100. He just took away pretty much 60% of that E100's hit points, doing 1,724 damage to the E100 within 4 seconds of the first shot, and 1,500 damage to that T-34, again within 4 seconds of the first shot. Because remember, the delay between each of these shells was only 2 seconds, and it still is only 2 seconds right now, at least up until patch 9.15, when this vehicle will be removed. And that is just what's so absolutely bafflingly insane about this tank, especially back when it had 6 shells a magazine, is that you were taken out of the game for this astronomically long period of pretty much up to about 50 seconds to a minute, depending on how good your crew skills were. But once you managed to get reloaded and you put yourself into that position, you could just evaporate tanks, even from full health, just really easily. One thing that's crazy about the WTF E100 as well is that the aim time is rather low, and it is the most accurate tank in the game. Here's an Object 140 who was very healthy indeed. Oh god, well, what was I talking about with the accuracy? Even though he misses 3 shells, he's still got 3 left in the magazine to be able to do 1,466 damage to the Object 140. So having managed to dish out nearly 7,000 damage of punishment from the hill, now Sir Pufferlot has managed to get himself into position to hopefully be able to defend the cap circle. Now he is firing APCR ammunition, because when 270mm of penetration isn't enough, and you absolutely must have the 350mm of APCR penetration, hey, why not, you know, for 3,360 alpha damage. Shuts down the Centurion, and literally 2 shots an old school Ferdinand. That Ferdinand died within 2 seconds of taking the first shell. Just absolutely baffling. So, unfortunately, even the APCR rounds on this tank do struggle against the T110E3 with a little bit of poor marksmanship. But still, gosh, taking out somebody capping and then taking out the entirety of another tier 8 tank and then having 3 more shells to fire at a T110E3, just how baffling was this tank, and still kind of is. And here really is the significant issue that I have with a tank of this type. Here is an IS-4. He is on 85% of his hit points, I think. I couldn't quite roughly see. And Sir Pufferlot is about to finish reloading. That is a tier 10 heavy tank, one of the most healthy vehicles in the game. 2 shots, 3 shots, and dead. Literally within 6 seconds of the first shell, he's managed to put 4 into his target, 2,112 damage. And Sir Pufferlot isn't done clipping full health tanks. Here's a Jagdtiger. Remember, old school Jagdtiger only has 1,800 hit points compared to the 2,100 that it has now. So that's even easier to deal with, right? Fires 4 into him, 1,800 damage. Within 6 seconds, still has 2 left in the magazine, but decides to reload. Unfortunately for Sir Pufferlot, even though he managed to do 15,000 damage this game, he doesn't quite have enough time to be able to kill all of the rest of the tanks, and he doesn't quite manage to make it over the hill to be able to take out the T95 before time runs out. Sir Pufferlot goes on to have the highest damage game ever in the history of World of Tanks. Well, at least of any game that's been uploaded to a replay website inside the random queue. So in patch 8.11, Wargaming decided that they might have been a little bit too generous with the WTF E-100, and they take away 200 of its hit points, change the turret traverse from 24 degrees down to 22 degrees, and the track traverse from 30 degrees to 26 degrees, while also quite dramatically increasing the dispersion or the bloom when you turn the turret by 212%. Now, patch 8.11 was released in February 2014, so that really overpowered WTF E-100 had only really lasted for about 3 to 4 months. But even with the nerfs, the tank continued to still absolutely destroy tier 10 matchmaking. And if you want to see what this slightly nerfed version of the WTF E-100 was like, even still with the 6-round 128mm, then simply click through up here. There's an awesome replay from Fimbul, absolutely dominating still over 13,000 damage. Nearly half a year later, in August 2014, Wargaming realized that they hadn't done enough in patch 8.11, and in patch 9.2 they nerfed the tank quite a lot harder. They further nerfed the tank's dispersion while moving and turning the tracks by 25% and reduced the amount of rounds that the 128mm can use from 6 to 5, and only gave a tiny little bit of compensation, changing the reload from 60 seconds to 58. And so if you've currently got a WTF E-100 and you sometimes wonder what this tank used to be like back in the day when it was horrendously overpowered, just imagine loading an entire extra shell into your magazine for only pretty much about 2 seconds reload, having 10% more health and massively better, and we're talking about 2 or 3 times better gun dispersion. But even though the tank's magazine potential went from 3,360 down to 2,800, that is still enough to kill 99% of the tanks in the game with a single magazine. So here's a clip from one of my old WTF E-100 videos where I'm going to go one-on-one with an E-100. So just to set the scene, I'm playing in my Waffentrager Auf E-100, and I have just been flanked by an E-100 driver. I saw that he just fired. I know that he's got a very long reload. I can fire at him on the move. 4, 5. So that was killing the entirety of a tier 10 German heavy tank, the E-100, pretty much within 8 seconds of the first shell. And remember, the E-100 is the 3rd most healthy tank in the game after the Maus and the Type 5 Heavy. So my question is was this a fun game mechanic for the E-100, and was it fair for him? There was pretty much nothing that he could have done in this situation at all. And there isn't another tank in the game that could have done this. Even the AMX-50 Foch 155 would have taken 10 seconds to be able to do 2,250 damage to him. Now, don't get me wrong, I love the variety of vehicles in World of Tanks. The fact that they're all so different makes the individual rounds feel like a unique experience. But the sheer stopping power of the WTF E-100 just presented this unprecedented threat on the battlefield. And when there's a threat such as this on the battlefield, it can just stop you from making any kind of aggressive plays altogether, irrelevant of how much armor you have and irrelevant if you have 2,000 hit points or not. Now, the balancing factor, of course, for the WTF E-100 was the rather long reload and the fact that the turret was gigantic and penetrated by even the weakest guns in the game. But the issue with the WTF E-100 is that while some of its stats were the worst, the others were not just the best by a short margin, they were best by a mile. And when you had one of these vehicles on your team, you felt like you just went in, took a shot for it, and then it would come round the corner and kill the entirety of whatever was in front of it, leaving you with less health and not the damage to make it worth tanking for these vehicles. And when there was one on the enemy team, quite often you just couldn't take the risk to make that aggressive play to progress the round, resulting in round after round of passive play, well, at least until this thing finished unloading, and then maybe you could go and take it out. And so frankly, the WTF E-100 is not going to be a vehicle that I miss having in my garage. It's such a boring tank for me to play, and I only really played it when you guys voted for it on the Tank Poll website, because having to wait for 52 seconds between each of its reloads was mind-numbingly boring, and when you finish reloading, it just felt completely unfair to be able to eradicate a vehicle from the game and send it back to its garage. And I hope that Wargaming have maybe learned a few things from the WTF E-100, that such extremes of tank design just aren't really good for the game. And I hope that in the future Wargaming don't come up up with anything that will be quite so destructive as the WTF E-100. But I'm very interested what you lovely ladies and gentlemen think about the WTF E-100's removal. Please vote in the top right hand corner of your screen whether you think it's a good thing and you're happy the vehicle's being removed, or you think that it was completely unnecessary and you wish it had stayed in the game. And so hopefully you've enjoyed this video. If you did, please consider giving it a like down below. It really helps the channel out. And if you want to see more WTF E-100 replays, then simply click through up here or use that more info icon in the top right hand corner of your screen to see a plethora of other destructive mayhem. And if the poll is not descriptive enough for you, then let me know all of your thoughts on the WTF E-100 in the comments down below. And as always, thank you so much for watching. You've been epic, and hopefully I'll see you soon.